So, we're creeping up on the release date of the hotly anticipated new Battlefield game, Battlefield 1. This new shooter from one of the big mainstream military multiplayer masters is set during the First World War, a conflict that has been largely untapped in video games, especially in comparison to the bigger, badder sequel, World War II. So a lot of noise has been made about how much research and effort has gone into recreating the look and the feel of the First World War. While many veteran gamers can probably recognize a German MP40 at 100 paces thanks to the huge pile of games set during that time, the iconic elements of World War I are not so recognizable. So now that everyone's getting into the conversation about authenticity, I thought it'd be a good time to talk about an issue that I've been thinking about recently, which is the role of authenticity versus realism in video games. These two ideas are ones that gamers often confuse and can sometimes mess with both of our expectations of games and of the real world. So let me clear up what I mean when I use the words authentic and realistic. For something to be realistic, it has to come close to showing something the way it is in real life. Lots of tropes in video games are not realistic. For example, shooting someone with a shotgun or a high caliber rifle does not throw a player backwards like a ragdoll. Even the fittest soldiers can't sprint all the time, and of course, taking cover for a few seconds does not heal your bullet wounds. For something to be authentic, on the other hand, it just has to look right. It has to feel and sound right. Do the weapons look the way they should? Do gunshots sound the way they should? Are people wearing uniforms from the right time? Authenticity is a tough thing to get right. It's expensive and time consuming. At least if you're making a sci-fi or fantasy game, you can get away with much more. But even then, some things have to be authentic in order for them to be convincing enough so that the player can suspend their disbelief. We have a word for software that puts realism at the core of its design: simulation. A computer simulation is a piece of software that aims to accurately reproduce something from real life, usually something that's expensive or dangerous to test in reality. Computer simulations are a primary way that the military and commercial pilots are trained before they get to sit in a real plane. Even people who fly remote control planes and helicopters have simulator software like RealFlight or Phoenix. It's important to realize that although this software might look like a game on the surface, they aren't really games. Of course, a simulation can also be a game if it supports a game design with the usual game elements like points, mission goals, and victory conditions, but there's no necessary reason for these to go together. What does and doesn't qualify for a game is a different discussion altogether. For now, it's enough to say that realism is something over and above the concept of a game, even if that game looks authentic or it should be realistic. Remember that the main purpose of a game is to be fun and entertaining. All other considerations are secondary. When you design or create a game, you have to follow the fun as a core design principle. This of course leads to a whole debate on what qualifies as fun. Obviously, people find different things to be fun, but there are some things that most people find fun and other things that only some people enjoy. For example, a game that has punishing difficulty or challenge as a core part of its design will only appeal to people who find that aspect of gaming fun. So to get back onto the topic of authenticity and realism, let's compare a game like Battlefield to something like Arma. The Arma games have realism at their core. In Arma, you aren't a bullet sponge that can heal behind cover. The firearm, the bullet physics reflect that fact that in real life, even trained marksmen have a hard time hitting anything in combat. In fact, during the last Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts, the US military clocked in 1 kill for every 250,000 rounds fired. I bet you don't feel so bad about your KD now, right? So, for people who are nuts about that sort of thing that Arma represents, the fun can be found in the realism of the simulation. For most people, however, slowly leopard crawling between buildings for 15 minutes only to be taken out by sniper fire from an enemy you had no chance of seeing with a single shot isn't really a fun experience. Over the years, I've found mountains of arguments about how realistic games like Battlefield or Call of Duty are. Most of the time, these arguments come from a mismatch between how authentic a game looks versus how realistically they react to things that happen. This leads to a lot of discussions whether something could really happen as we see it in Battlefield, a game, I have to remind you, where you can eject from a jet, shoot a guy in another jet, and then return to the cockpit of the jet you just jumped out of. Yes, indeed, folks, you should manage your expectations on that front. A lot of players ask for more realism in games like Battlefield, but I think what they are really asking for is a better illusion of realism and authenticity. It's right that game developers only care about realism if it adds something to the game without hurting the fun. A really realistic Battlefield game may not be the game you're truly looking for, so be careful what you wish for. So what do you think? Are you upset that games like Battlefield aren't simulators, or are you more fine with the way things are? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and share it on other social media. If you wish to support me further, I currently have a Patreon where backers can support my future content and further increase the quality and research of these videos. As always, thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.